Hi, Stephen Lovely here for cordcutting.com. Today we're going to be doing an unboxing and review of the Chromecast with Google TV. This is Google's newest streaming device, and it's a combination of two that they've had around for a while. The Chromecast, which some of you already know, is a little dongle that you can put on your TV and very easily cast your screen up from your phone, your laptop, some other device. And Android TV, which is a smart TV platform or streaming platform, a lot like Roku, Fire TV, or some of the individual ones you'll see on other brands of smart TVs. By having both here, Google's promising us a little bit of both worlds. They're still going to be easy to cast things up from our phone or from our laptop so that we can pixelate and watch and then continue watching on our TV. But it's also going to let us do some of the things we're used to doing from Roku and other devices like that. We're going to be able to gather around family and friends and choose something to watch together instead of one person looking down at their phone and choosing what everyone's going to watch. So ideally, this is going to give us everything we want from both a Roku or Fire TV and from a Chromecast. To find out if it will, we're going to take it out of the box, look at what we got, and test it out. Let's check it out. So what's in the Chromecast with Google TV box? Well, for starters, of course, there's the Chromecast with Google TV itself, which is a familiar looking thing. It's got a similar kind of form factor to what we're used to from the other Chromecast devices, and for that matter, from some competitors. It's a dongle with a little flexible bit of wire and a HDMI port. The flexible bit is convenient in case your HDMI port's hard to reach. You don't have to worry about this thing getting clanking off the side of your TV when you try to jam it into a little port. It's flexible, it's out of the way. It comes with a power cord. Also comes with a wall wart there. You can plug the USB end of that in and the other end into your wall, to your outlet. You might find that you need that. I found that the power on my USB port on my TV did not supply enough for this particular device, so your mileage might vary. Others of you might be lucky enough to be able to just plug that USB cable right back into your TV and keep everything hidden behind there. Also in here is the remote, which includes batteries. We'd love to see that. Buttons on the remote, pretty familiar things. You've got your shortcut button. Naturally, Google's reserved one for itself since it owns YouTube. And you've got this darker button up here, and that gives you the voice search function, the Google Assistant. So that's very much like Siri or Alexa from Amazon. Nothing new there. You just hold down the button and you say things. Roku has a version of this as well, just simple voice search functions. The assistants can do a little more, the Google Assistants and Alexas of the world, but I find that all of these do the same basic things in the sense that when you want to watch something, you can hold down that button, say the name of it, and it will find the best way for you to watch it. Which, by the way, is often through Google itself. Google, like Fire TV, is pretty quick to elevate its own products. Google's in the business of letting you rent and buy movies through Google Play and now through this device. And it would rather that you get them from them rather than from Amazon or from Vudu or any of the other companies that exist to do the same thing. So no surprises there, but as you might expect, when you get a device from a company like this and you search for something like Star Wars using the voice search, you're going to see, yes, where you can watch it from competitors, but when it comes down to renting or buying it, they're going to be quick to surface their own option. You're not really going to see a big list of other ways to rent or buy. So if you're used to buying and renting your movies through Amazon and you want to keep doing that, you might have to go with the Amazon app on here, and you might have to worry about little disputes between them and Google that might reject that app for a while or take it out of the App Store, things like that. So if you are a big loyalist to one of these platforms, particularly these ones that are owned by companies that do it themselves, Amazon and in this case Google, who really have their own rental and buying programs, I would tend to stick with the one that you're familiar with because they might get into a spat and not get along so well, and you'll get a lot more of a convenient experience when you can go right into the menus and see the movies that you already own and rent in that ecosystem. It's a bit less of a concern with Roku, which is relatively agnostic in this way, but it's always a concern. Whenever you're renting or buying from a given app, you want to make sure that that stuff is always available to you through the device that you use. So it makes sense to go with the same brand name that you use to rent or buy. Presumably Google will never get into a fight with itself, so there will be no need to worry about Google's own Google Play leaving the Google App Store. Now, speaking of surfacing things, Google really goes out of its way with this platform to try to get everything you watch in one place. If you're used to Roku, you know that the standard streaming approach is something a little more, or it used to be a little more like your iPhone, where you would open up a screen, you'd see a lot of apps, get into the apps, and that's where you do your streaming. That's still the case. The streaming still happens in the apps, but platforms like this, and to some extent Fire TV, are trying to combine the offerings of those platforms into eye-catching little ads, little menus, little scrollable selectors that you can choose what to watch without actually getting into the app, and only open the app itself when it's time to actually watch. That, of course, makes Google's platform feel more useful, which is good for Google, and it can kind of act as a broker here to get you to watch something and perhaps even convince you to get a premium subscription billed through, you guessed it, Google. Whether or not this appeals to you is a matter of taste. I personally tend to open up the apps themselves and browse within the apps. I like to know what's in each selection and, maybe even get a little frustrated and back out with that back button and show HBO Max that I'm sick of that selection. But either one is possible in Google's ecosystem. It's just that they tend to prefer this method of molding everything together, of mixing everything together, and offering you lists of different videos that may come from totally different platforms. Here's an HBO Max show. Here's a Peacock show. They're right next to each other in this menu. Google is inviting you to watch either or, and to select it through this main menu rather than diving into the app. The other part of this, of course, is casting. This whole part that we've been talking about so far is more like what Roku or Fire TV does, but screen mirroring and casting things from mobile devices and laptops has really been Chromecast's bread and butter up till now. So can it still do it? Well, generally, yes. I found it to be pretty easy to use, but I will say that I ran into a few more hiccups than I expected. For example, I had an error when I was trying to use it with Netflix at one point, and I found that things were a little less convenient on this device than on my old Chromecast, in part because this device is a platform like Roku or Fire TV, and it tended to want to open the app itself. I could cast something from my old Chromecast, or to my old Chromecast, I should say, without worrying too much about the app on the Chromecast. It all happened in the background. I just see the screen, I see what's playing. Here, there's an app for that. If I cast something from, for example, YouTube TV, which is owned by Google, there is a YouTube TV app that opens on the device I'm casting to. And that's important because Google really wants me to sign in. It wants me to combine my experience in these two platforms between Google's mobile platform and Google's streaming platform in this case, all through Google's streaming app, YouTube TV. So I got all these pop-ups coming up saying, hey, can you just sign in on the other device? Well, I can, but sometimes you might just want to be able to cast something without having to go through that whole song and dance and connect your profiles and whatnot. And that sort of slick convenience is part of what made Chromecast so great in the first place. So it was a shame to see so much of that going on, so much of Google trying to rope me into logging in and connecting all my accounts. That said, generally the casting worked pretty well. It's still a really good protocol. It's still a really good way to cast things from screen to screen. And to have it combined with a streaming platform on this level was really pretty impressive. So that was Google's Chromecast with Google TV. Overall, in my testing, I found it performed really, really well, and I loved it compared to the old Chromecast. I always liked Chromecast for what it could do. I liked being able to cast things from my screen, and I liked the way that it would serve all sorts of different apps from my phone or my laptop. But it wasn't always ideal when I was in a group, because sometimes you want to look at the things to watch with everyone looking at the TV, choosing different titles, and it felt more like a device that was designed for me to use alone. That problem's gone now with the Chromecast with Google TV, because the Google TV side of things allows me to do all those things that I'm used to from Fire TV and Roku. It allows me to go into full screen on my TV and look at movie options and do all those wonderful things. So it's really patched up the major problem that I had with Chromecast in the first place, and it makes it a really worthy competitor to Roku and Fire TV devices. It's also competitively priced, right around $50. It's got a lot going for it. So if you're a Google fan, or even if you're not, I think it's well worth taking a look at. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Once again, I'm Stephen Lovely for cordcutting.com. Hope to see you around again, and if you wouldn't mind, we'd love for you to like and subscribe and to pay us a visit sometime at cordcutting.com.